The Black Sea is frozen over with tension. Steaming southwest through international waters is the USS Porter, a multi-billion-dollar Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer. Her crew has just completed 10 grueling days of NATO maritime drills, and the mind of every sailor on board is drifting toward home. But in the modern theater of naval warfare, complacency is a luxury no one can afford. Without warning, deep within the ship's Combat Information Center, or CIC, the glowing displays of the Aegis Combat System paint a terrifying reality: a single radar contact, low, fast, squawking absolutely nothing on the identification friend or foe or IFF transponder. It is closing hard on the destroyer's position. In the dimly lit nerve center, where the crew fights the ship from the shadows, the Tactical Action Officer, or TAO, stares at the telemetry. Range is dropping rapidly. The contact is holding a steady bearing of 225 degrees, maintaining high speed and low altitude. On the Emergency International Guard channel, the watch team transmits a tense message: "Unidentified aircraft on guard. This is Coalition Warship 78. State your intentions." Nothing. Only the cold hiss of static fills the radio. They hail again, clearer, spelling out the coordinates in plain language. Still silence. To understand why the room remains dead silent, we have to look at the psychological weight every American commander carries. In the corner of the CIC stands a ghost. The ghost of 1988. During the Iran-Iraq War, the Aegis cruiser USS Vincennes misidentified a climbing civilian Iranian airliner as a diving F-14 Tomcat fighter jet. 2 missiles were launched and 290 civilians lost their lives. That catastrophic failure fundamentally altered U.S. Navy rules of engagement. It proved that the most dangerous thing a modern warship can do is to become certain too fast. But as the seconds tick away, the luxury of time is running out. To prevent another tragedy while protecting the ship, the crew relies on a masterpiece of military engineering, the AN/SPY-1D Passive Electronically Scanned Array Radar. Unlike traditional rotating radars that sweep the sky once every few seconds, the 4 massive octagonal faces of the SPY-1 system are locked to the ship's superstructure. They fire relentless overlapping pulses of electromagnetic energy into the atmosphere, updating target tracking thousands of times a second. The radar cross-section of the incoming blip comes back too small for a commercial airliner. It matches no civilian flight paths. Suddenly, the ship's electro-optical sight slews onto the target's bearing. The blurry infrared image hardens into a recognizable silhouette, 4 heavy turboprops, and a long, needle-like stinger boom extending from the tail. This is the Ilyushin IL-38 NATO, reporting name May. The Il-38 is Russia's dedicated maritime patrol and anti-submarine warfare aircraft. A 68-ton Cold War relic with massive endurance. That strange stinger boom on the back is a magnetic anomaly detector designed to sniff out the metallic hulls of submerged submarines. But today, it isn't hunting submarines. It was sent to find the USS Porter. The pilot hadn't suffered a radio failure. The transponder wasn't broken. It was turned off manually before takeoff. This silence was entirely intentional. The Il-38 lumbers low and slow right down the length of the destroyer, close enough for lookouts on the bridge wing to count the cockpit windows. The heavy thrum of its 4 engines rattles the deck plates. Then the old scout banks away, heading back toward the occupied coast of Crimea. But experienced naval officers know a fundamental truth of modern maritime combat: scouts never show up alone. They show up first. The Il-38's mission wasn't to attack. It was to fix the USS Porter's exact GPS coordinates and hand them off to something with teeth. The track of the Il-38 is barely cold when the Aegis radar lights up again. New contacts. Multiple. Inbound from Crimea, moving faster, higher, and with far more aggressive flight profiles. Inside the Porter, a warning echoes through the command loop. New contact, low port bow, closing fast. On the forward deck, a squat white dome-shaped weapon system snaps into action. Without a single human hand touching the controls, the mount swivels violently, locking its barrel directly onto the incoming jet. This is the Mark 15 Phalanx Close-In Weapon System, or CIWS, affectionately called R2-D2 with a shotgun. By sailors, it is an entirely autonomous radar-guided 20mm Gatling gun. Spinning at a rate of 4,500 rounds per minute, it is designed to create a literal wall of tungsten armor-piercing ammunition, sawing incoming anti-ship missiles in half seconds before impact. Below the deck, packed within the Mark 41 Vertical Launch System, or VLS-90 cell hatches, sit sealed and patient. The Aegis computer has already computed the firing solutions. It continuously recalculates the interception math range, bearing wind velocity, and time of flight. The USS Porter is a cocked hammer. One word from the captain and the incoming aircraft would cease to exist, but that word cannot be spoken. The destroyer is bound by weapons posture white/weapons hold. This means lethal force is strictly prohibited unless an actual hostile act occurs or hostile intent is undeniably demonstrated. Through the electro-optical tracking cameras, the silhouette of the threat clarifies. It's a Sukhoi Su-24 NATO reporting name Fencer. The Su-24 is a supersonic twin-engine variable sweep wing strike aircraft. It was engineered by the Soviet Union for low-altitude, high-speed penetration of enemy airspace to deliver up to 8 tons of bombs and missiles. The Fencer drops down to less than 300 feet above the water, accelerating past Mach 1. The range drops to 8 miles, then 6, then 4. The tension in the CIC is thick enough to cut with a knife. A young sailor's hand hovers inches from a defensive console, fighting the survival instinct to fire. The captain remains perfectly calm. He watches the wings of the Su-24. They are swept fully back, the configuration for maximum aerodynamic speed, not weapon deployment. If he fires early on a jet that is merely posturing, the United States starts a shooting war with a nuclear power over a game of chicken. If he waits too long against a real attack, his ship takes an anti-ship cruise missile straight to the superstructure. He chooses to ride the razor's edge. He does nothing. The Su-24 Fencer screams down the port beam of the destroyer and pulls up hard. The ship's Aegis system tracks it flawlessly, holding a continuous missile lock but refuses to bite. To the Russian pilot, the lack of an active electronic countermeasure or a missile launch looks like fear. He assumes the Americans are rattled. He banks his 43-ton strike jet into a wide eastern loop, drops below 300 feet again, and sets up for a second, even more hazardous pass. This time, the entry angle is catastrophic. The pilot aims to cross directly ahead of the destroyer's bow, lower and faster than before. On the bridge, lookouts brace themselves. The speck on the horizon transforms into an airborne juggernaut in the span of a single heartbeat. The Su-24 tears past at over 500 knots. At this distance, a single pocket of unstable air, a sudden gust of wind, or a millisecond of pilot error would slam the jet directly into the destroyer's main mast. As the jet passes, the displaced air catches up with the vessel. A massive atmospheric shockwave slams into the USS Porter. The ship heaves violently. Below deck unlashed gear goes flying across the mess decks, and ceramic mugs shatter against the bulkheads. The main mast whips back and forth so violently that the horizon blurs. Instantly, an automated warning horn begins screaming into the chaos. What rocked the destroyer wasn't a bomb, it was the pure kinetic wake of a supersonic military aircraft at point-blank range. Yet while the Russian pilot is smiling in his cockpit, thinking he scored a massive psychological victory, he has actually made a devastating tactical error. By repeatedly buzzing the ship at close range, the Su-24 was flying directly into the maw of the AN/SLQ-32 electronic warfare suite. The Porter's passive sensors weren't just watching, they were recording. Every radar emission from the Su-24, its exact engine acoustics, its electronic signature, and its pilot's radio frequencies were captured, digitized, and uploaded via secure satellite uplink straight to Pentagon intelligence databases. The confrontation escalates to its absolute peak. The first fencer pulls away, but the radar paints a new nightmare. A second contact blooms right behind the first. It's a wingman. The two Su-24s slide into a tight combat-ready formation wingtip to wingtip, arcing around the destroyer's stern. The electro-optical sensor zooms in on their underwing hardpoints and the watch team stiffens. Confirm visual, they are armed. Live ordnance is hanging from the wings of both aircraft. The profile is no longer just a reckless stunt, it is a simulated combat strike run. The twin ship formation rolls in throttles pinned. The gap between the aircraft and the ship collapses at a rate of over a mile every few seconds. In the VLS cells, the automated fire control system locks green on the premier weapon of American naval air defense, the RIM-66 Standard Missile 2, or SM-2. The SM-2 is a 15-foot-long, 1,500-pound beast of a missile. Traveling at speeds exceeding Mach 3, it can intercept targets far beyond the horizon, carrying a 137-pound blast fragmentation warhead designed to shred titanium airframes into scrap metal. The lead fencer is now within 2 miles. The automated CIWS barrels twitch frantically, tracking both targets simultaneously. The entire ship is a loaded gun, and the captain's thumb is on the trigger. Under maritime international law, an armed military aircraft flying a simulated attack profile inside 2 miles constitutes an imminent threat. The captain has every legal right to vaporize both jets. The geometry of the encounter leaves zero room for error. If the pilots don't pull up, the physical mass of the planes will destroy the ship regardless of intent. The captain has 2 choices: maneuver the 500-foot destroyer, hard risking turning the ship directly into the aircraft's path, or hold course and trust the skill of 2 hostile pilots. He commands his helmsman to hold course. His voice remains flat. 2 miles, 1 mile, half a mile. The gray superstructure of the USS Porter expands exponentially in the Russian pilots' cockpits. The sheer size of the destroyer fills their windscreens. For the first time, the calculation changes. The gap between the ship's masts looks impossibly small. At the absolute final fraction of a second, the nerves of the Russian pilots break. Both aviators haul back violently on their control sticks. The immense G-forces crush them into their ejection seats as the wings bite the air. The twin Su-24s skyrocket over the Porter's radar, arrays their afterburners roaring like thunder as they disappear into the heavy, overcast sky. The showdown is over. The U.S. Navy had refused to blink. If you found this deep dive tactical analysis fascinating, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment below, and watch our next video on how similar aggressive tactics are playing out in the South China Sea. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.